Well, greetings, fam. This is it's an unofficial God perspective moment. Um, so I was thinking about something. I think I was thinking about this last night. I can't remember, man. The days just come together, don't they? Anyway, I was thinking about Jesus, and I was thinking about, well. Let me say this first. Keeping with the idea of how do we put on Christ? How do we become more of a Christ? So keeping with that thought and that idea, I was thinking about Jesus, and I was thinking about, it was last night. And I was thinking about remember how the Pharisees, when Jesus would go about, he would do it, his miracles and his healings and all of these kind of things, and then they started to say that he was doing these things from Beelzebub. He was, I guess you can say, he was being empowered by the devil per se. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, what would make them say that? What would make them say that? What was he doing, or what did this thing look like to the point where they would just spew that out of their thoughts or out of their mouth? Man, he's doing this by Beelzebub, however you say his name. And so I was thinking about that for a second, and I was like, wow, you know what? Jesus, he had to have looked. I don't know how they went about doing these things on their own, from an Old Testament standpoint. How was demons being cast out? How was the sick being healed and those things? Because it was actually happening. But how did it look? What was different about the way Jesus was doing it versus how the Jewish people, the children of Israel, how it was that they saw those things happening? So I was thinking about that, and it was like, why did they say that? And I believe it was this. One of the characteristics of a Christ, of being what Jesus was in the earth, was that Jesus was very unapologetic about, unapologetic is a weird word, but let's just stay there. He was unapologetic about how he chose to go about showing God. Remember when he was raising Lazarus, I say this all the time, when he was raising Lazarus, and he came to the point where he said he consulted the Father per se, and he said, remember, I do this in their hearing. Whatever I'm praying right now, whatever they are hearing me say, as I talk to you, Father, I'm only doing it for their faith or for their belief, because you always hear me. I don't need to do this way. So there's something that Jesus really reveals to us as it relates to putting on Christ or walking in the identity of Christ, that kind of speaks to these kind of ideas. Jesus probably, when he was doing his miracles, when he was casting out devils in front of whoever was watching, he did it in a way that it made him look, it was all eyes were on him. And I know that's pretty much how it is anyway, but all eyes were on him, and they were on him to the point where the Pharisees and the Sadducees were saying, oh man, this dude's got to be doing this by Beelzebub, because he doesn't do it the way we do it. He doesn't consult God the way we consult God, so that it has to be something evil in what he's doing. And I'm sure it was a lot of other things, but one of the characteristics of becoming a Christ, of being like Jesus was, is you have to be unapologetic in your delivery, in your rescue. I was thinking about, I had a moment. We were at the store, and I saw somebody, and I was like, man, I wonder, are they okay? And I imagined, me praying for them. And then I imagined me fumbling around trying to find the right mix of words so that whatever they needed could actually happen. So if it was healing, the right combination of Jesus this and Jesus that was actually going to get them healed. And then I felt, in the moment, I felt like it didn't work, but I felt like the Spirit said, you are trying to give someone something that doesn't belong to you. So I'm like, well, what are you talking about? In yourself. And it was like, and then I caught it, and I knew what God was saying. You're trying to get somebody healed by way of a virtue that's not even. Jesus is where Jesus is. We always say in Jesus' name, and I understand it, and I know the little pieces to it, but we don't know the depth of the disconnect that Jesus is trying to get us connected to, that God is trying to really get us connected to. So we have to be courageous enough to display God in our own thing. And it's so many wrong ways to hear this, and that's why I'm kind of fumbling around, because I can hear how you hearing it, so it kind of makes it kind of makes you nervous. But anyway, so God was saying, you're trying to give somebody something that can only come from you. You're asking for the power that was in Christ Jesus. You're asking for that power to come down or come from wherever to go into that person. But you don't realize that a part of being a Christ, a part of being what Jesus gave you, is that you have to display that. You have to house that spirit so that it can come through you and into them. When they were moving through the crowds, and then the woman with the issue of blood, and she touched the hem of Jesus's garment, and it says that, power went out, and Jesus like, who touched me? And it's the same concept. It's something that was in him that has to come from him and out into you. There's something that God is trying to get you to understand that's in you that has to come from you, out of you, into them. That is a nature, and that is a display of what it means to be a Christ. I wanted to do this earlier because I don't have any more light. So I'm glad I wanted to cut this short. So, man, I pray this makes sense. And I pray for those of you who can hear it, because I know a lot of you you're going to be kind of, you're going to turn your nose up, because you're afraid of displaying the nature of God that God always intended for you to display the way you have to display it. But you got to be courageous, man. You got to go out and find ways to put on Christ. And yes, sometimes it might not work, or sometimes it looks like it's not working, because there's something that's building up in you that once it's ready, it's going to bubble over, man. And it's going to spill out into everybody that you touch, that you speak to, the work that you're doing. So pray it makes sense, y'all. Pastor Jamal, Rising Ground Church. Again, this is an unofficial God perspective moment. I didn't want it to be this long, but I'll talk to you. Peace.